Thank you for joining us for the sheep bracket of the OSU Ag Madness Tournament of Education. Today, Brady Campbell and I, Christine Gelly, will be presenting to you about lamb marketing and sheep breeds. Throughout today's presentation, we're going to talk to you about market trends. We'll look at some sheep breeds that are typically well suited for Eastern markets. And we will also look at current market demands and how things have recently changed. To introduce ourselves, if we haven't met in person, it's a pleasure to meet you here on the webinar. Feel free to reach out to us. Our contact information will be provided at the end if you have questions that pop up throughout today's webinar. Right now, marketing talks are trendy. We hope above all that ours today will be friendly. I'm not an ag economist, but we recognize that market trends are extremely important for you as producers, and we want to provide that information to you the best way we know possible. So hang tight as we continue through looking at market trends today, and as we move on with more suggestions to help make your production system fit today's markets. As I previously mentioned, we'll go over market demands, sheep breeds to meet your needs, traditional versus non-traditional marketing options, and current market status. And with that, I'll turn it over to Brady to get us started with the first look at a market trend.
Thanks for that introduction, Christine. The first figure here that we wanted to kind of introduce to you guys here was some figures provided by the USDA, APHIS, and NASS Association. And this first figure really illustrates the seasonality of the U.S. Lamb industry itself. As you can see on the screen here, we can see that the red bars that we have are representing those lambs that are being born during each respective month across the bottom of our figure here. And then our black bars are going to be our animals that are being harvested themselves. As you can see, as we compare red to black, we can see that our black bars or our harvest bars remain quite consistent over the course of the year. And that's good for us as a lamb industry because we know that a majority of our lambs are going to be born here in late winter, early spring, and late spring. But as an industry, our consumers are always wanting this consistent product, and therefore we must ensure that we continually provide a consistent product to them on a yearly basis or on a calendar basis. However, the challenge becomes how do we supply lambs during some of these lower times of need? Therefore, we do push the limits in some cases where some of our lambs do approach that year of age. We may get a larger loin eye, which does skew the size of that loin eye and that product is being put in the meat case. But in general, we do supply a quite consistent supply to our consumers themselves. I also wanted to point out that during this summer slump, we don't see a great proportion of lambs being born during this time frame. And then even so, beyond September, October, November, and December, we can see that the number of lambs being born throughout that portion of the year are quite low when we compare them back to, again, January through May. This figure really illustrates that there is a potential for our producers to potentially get involved in the sheep industry, breed those ewes in April and May, have them lamb in September and October, and provide more lambs for some of this fall-based marketing strategies. Our next figure, provided by the same source there from USDA, takes a look at the percent of lamb carcasses within each weight category it sells. To point out a couple of these bars, red bar is going to indicate those lambs that had a carcass weight that were under 55 pounds. So those are going to be some of our smaller roaster lambs that we are used to selling here in the eastern U.S. On the other end of the spectrum, we can see that the yellow bar at the top of our figure is going to represent a lamb carcass that is 95 pounds or greater. So those are going to be some of our heavyweight lambs, perhaps lambs that are coming from the Western range. They're bigger frame type sheep. They were grown low and slow out on pasture. They were brought into the feedlot to finish out that finishing phase and then being marketed at this heavier weight. just strictly so they could be at a finished size themselves. We can see that during this summer slump, again, June, July, August, we can see that a great proportion of our industry makes up some of these heavier carcass weight type of lambs. I'd also like to point out that this red bar, these small roaster lambs, again, those that we're accustomed to feeding and harvesting here in the eastern U.S., you can see remain quite consistent. So it doesn't make a huge percentage of our industry itself, less than 5%, as you can see, but nonetheless still an important player when it comes to providing these protein sources to our consumers. Further looking at our market sources here, taking a look at this figure, looking at traditional slaughter weights of lambs. These figures were generated from data from 2014 to 2017. These lambs were about 145 pounds average live weight. We can see that these heavier weight lambs, we can kind of take a look at supply and demand here. Supply of these heavyweight lambs perhaps are greater during April and May time period as compared to the rest of the calendar year itself. So again, understanding where these heavier weight lambs may be needed in our production systems themselves. We can see that August through October, there is a higher price demanded for some of these heavier weight lambs. Is that due to the fact that we don't have many of these heavier weight lambs available during this time point? Or is it because we are selecting different holidays and different reasons upon why we may be wanting to select those type of lambs during that time period? Taking a look at the other end of the spectrum, non-traditional lambs. These are going to be 68-pound lambs on an average live weight basis. This data was collected from slaughter facilities from 2010 to 2016, from the source being provided by Texas A&M AgriLife Research and Extension. As you can see, it's a nice figure for classic price and demand, supply and demand, taking a look at these animals. Our volume line or number of lambs entering the market is going to be represented by our red line, and then the price given per head is going to be represented by our black line itself. Now, if we think again of the big holiday that just occurred where lamb is going to be consumed, again being April, that Easter time period, our prices, as you can see, were quite high, and our volume was quite high. But as we transition into those summer months with some of these lighter weight lambs, we can see that the price plummets, but we also have a large supply of those lambs as well. Conversely, we just discussed earlier that there is an opportunity for fall lambing and fall lamb marketing through those fall months and even those early winter months. And as you can see, that our volume is down in terms of number of lambs being available, but we do see our highest price and demand for those products during those time periods. So again, a nice marketing strategy that we can use if we're able to get our operations switched to a fall lambing type system. As a note, we need to consider when is lamb desired and what trend does this follow, and these following figures will kind of highlight some of those answers for us. This is some good information provided by Fresh Look. These figures were generated July 9th in 2017. You can see that on our y-axis, that's going to be the pounds of lamb being sold during each respective time period, and those time periods are represented by dates on the x-axis located on the bottom of our figure. We can see that in our legend, our data are from 2013 to 2017, and each year being illustrated by a different color. For total pounds of lamb, you can see that our highest peak is going to be about 8 million pounds of lamb being demanded, and that demand revolves around this April time period. And again, that indicates that Easter here in the United States is going to be our largest time period in which lamb is demanded and also consumed by our consumer base. It's also nice to see that here on December 25th or Christmas, we can see that there is another peak in demand for lamb. So that reassures us as an industry that we have two time periods where we do know that we will have some type of demand for our product. Breaking down each of these segments, we'll go through several of these in the upcoming slides, but the first of which I'd like to take a look at is going to be this rib segment. So these are going to be some of our rib chops. As you can see, They also didn't report anything on loin chops, so we'll also consider this as our loin chop section itself as well. We can see in retrospect we have less demand for this product, but perhaps that's because it's some of our smaller product. However, on the other spectrum of things, it's also going to be our most expensive cut of meat as well. We can see that this product is going to peak again during this April time period at about 700,000 pounds of this lamb being consumed, but we also see an equal peak being represented here on Christmas of this year as well. Something that's also interesting to note about this specific cut of meat itself is that Christine, who's also on board with us here, has been working quite diligently, working from home, and she's been able to create and generate some different types of videos regarding how to cook and prepare lamb. So what I'll do here is I'm going to stop sharing my screen itself, and we're going to turn this over to Christine.
Thank you, Brady. So what I'm going to do at this point, guys, is I'm going to share my screen with you, which is going to show you the Facebook link to the Noble County Extension Facebook page. And I'll make sure that I have my share computer sound turned on for you so that you can hear it. We have been trying very hard to continue to connect with our clientele through Extension throughout this time of self-isolation. And one of the ways that I've been trying to do that from my home is to produce videos on a daily basis that help maintain that connection. So last week, leading up to Easter, we did a couple features where we actually cooked lamb. So let me start this for you. I'm going to fast forward to the section where we really work with the chops. That's at about 12 minutes and 30 seconds here. They're going to cook in no time. And I'm going to put them on my American Lamb cutting board. I love this thing. It tells you all kinds of helpful information about how to cook lamb and the nutritional benefits. As I get these chops out, let me tell you that the lamb market has been affected just like all the other commodity markets have been by COVID-19, and especially so because this is a big time. This is the best time of year to market lamb before Easter, and that market is completely disrupted now. So a lot of shepherds are trying to rethink how they market their lamb this year, and how to still get it processed and into storage so that when things do ramp up again, we have a good supply. We actually produce less lamb in the United States than we eat, so we still import a lot of lamb. And if you did not know, Ohio is the largest sheep producing state east of the Mississippi. That's a thing you know now. If you choose to go back and watch the rest of this video, you can watch as things progress. We do 2 chops on the stove and 2 in the broiler to show a couple different cooking methods. I'm going to share another video with you, which is us making stir fry. Brady, will you confirm with me that it's still sharing the appropriate screen?
Yes.
Okay. So this is a video that's played with clips as we go throughout the process of making lamb stir fry. And we did that using just some cuts of stew meat. Tonight, Bethany and I are going to show you how we make lamb stir fry. We're going to show them the ingredients that we'll use first.
3 eggs.
We are going to use 3 eggs, that's right. That's already picked out the eggs that we're going to use. Fresh
And
eggs from today.
would I use vegetables,
That's
meat, and syrup?
That's not syrup, but good try. Meat, this is about 1 pound of stew meat.
We're done
Soy sauce.
and once.
This is peach freezer jam. We will need a little bit of flour, a little bit of water,
Rice.
and rice. So again, you can go back and access these videos later. We wanted to share those with you because we think that the more personal touch you can put on your product and how you market it yourself can go a long way. So don't be shy to pursue avenues like that at your home with your friends. We need as much help as we can get marketing. Like I said, I'm going to put the links to that in the chat box so those of you who are watching the recording later can access those videos. Thanks, Brady.
Thanks, Christine. So as we get back into our PowerPoint slides here, we can take a look at the rest of this lamb carcass itself. As we transition to the rear of the animal towards that leg segment, again, just as we've seen previously, there's a large demand for these products during our Easter holidays. And arguably, we can see that the demand for leg is probably one of the greatest demands of our lamb carcass itself, topping out at about 4 million pounds, especially during that year 2015. We also see, as we did before, this slight peak or spike here during our Christmas holiday. Thinking about some of our less expensive types of cuts, we do have our shoulder segments. And the shoulder segment is a bit different as we compare it to some of our other wholesale cuts. And you can see that this shoulder segment of that carcass remains a bit consistent throughout the year. We're hovering around about that 1 million pounds of that shoulder segment. I believe that the shoulder segment can be used in many different ways and also is a bit more cost effective in terms of our producers and our consumers being able to get their hands on some of this product at a relatively inexpensive price mark. The shoulder segment itself is quite diverse in what you can do. You can roast it, you can pull it, you can put it in your crock pot. There's different methods of cooking, so a lot more opportunity for the different types of dishes that you can make and utilize using this cut of meat. And then the last one that we wanted to take a look at here was going to be our ground segment. And as you can see, as years progress, you can see that the ground lamb industry or demand for ground lamb continues to rise as our years go on. And that's reassuring for our industry because our consumers are more accepting of our product, and they're also experiencing new foods that they're able to produce using these ground products. So also, besides the meat sector, as producers, we need to understand what we are selling and how we are getting these animals sold. Now, as you can see, I've got the labels down here at the bottom of each of these sale reports, and these are going to be from our Mount Hope auction here in Mount Hope, Ohio. You also notice that the dates are a bit different. This was a Wednesday sale from April 10th of 2019. So a year ago, these would have been the sale numbers that we as producers would have expected if it wasn't for our COVID-19 outbreak that we have just experienced. As you can see here, especially on April 10th, 2019, you can see that these prime lambs, these prime roaster lambs, were bringing upwards of $3.50 per pound during this time period. We've got some data that shows what these lambs brought just a couple weeks ago, and it's quite different in retrospect. You can also see that this data is collected from the Wednesday sale, again from Mount Hope on December 4th of 2019. Again, these are going to be some of those fall lambs that we previously discussed. And you can see, again, these roaster lambs during this time period, perhaps lambs that were born during the month of October, 1st of October, 60 days old, weighing about 40 to 60 pounds. These lambs are topping out at $4.40 a head. So again, a big value associated with some of these out of season lambs. So definitely an opportunity that our producers could consider when raising different types of sheep during the course of the year. The other piece of information I wanted to note here as well is that the reality is, folks, is that we don't have a lot of sheep available in the East during this time period in the early winter or winter months. And as you can see, even some of our heavier weight lambs, up to 60 and 80 pounds, topping out at $3.10, and even some of our higher finished lambs, about 100 pound, especially for some of our lambs that we may be raising here in the eastern U.S., topping out at over $2.30 a pound. So again, a lot of opportunity available for our producers if we're able to get those lambs marketed during this time period in the fall. But again, thinking about what we are typically used to here, remember these numbers as we transition through some of these slides. To make this more holistic and thinking more beyond the bounds of just the state of Ohio, I wanted to collect some other data from other sale barns. And this one's going to come from the USDA Marketing Ag. You'll see that this information is a bit dated from 2018, but as I went back and I reviewed the data, all of these seem to be quite consistent year in and year out. So I've decided, since we had this information already put together, that we would continue on using this example. In the first portion of our figure here, you can see that they were comparing lambs that were weighing about 100 pounds. You can see that this first group was 102 pounds, second group was 93 pounds. Now I do want to note in the comment section over here off to the right hand side, you can see that this first bar here represents a blank space. That blank space is going to be indicative of a lamb that's been wool. It's a wool type sheep, or it's been shorn. So we do know that it originates from a wool type sheep itself. If it's not from a wool type sheep, it will specify that, and you can see what we're comparing here is going to be hair type sheep. The one thing I did want to note that you can see here that during these sale reports, when they differentiate between wool and hair sheep, our hair sheep are bringing about $10 less per hundredweight. As we go down to this second portion of this figure, we're taking a look at a different set of lambs. Again, note the weight range here, 40 to 50 pounds, so about an average of that 45-pound range. Again, when we compare these wool sheep to our hair sheep, we do see this price differential, with the price favoring those that are lambs that are of the wool variety. However, I do know that there is a portion of this figure that indicates that hair sheep are bringing a premium when they're compared to our wool type sheep. You can see this occurs during our 50 to 60 pound range. These lambs are weighing closer to that 60 pounds. You can see that as compared to these first two statistics that I've outlined here in the red boxes, that here in the green flip-flops, we can see that our hair sheep are bringing about a $10 premium per hundredweight as we compare them to our wool type sheep. So again, if we're raising specific types of sheep, specific breeds of sheep, we need to understand when, how, and where we need to be marketing these lambs in order to receive the largest premium that we're able to receive. This information again comes from the New Holland Auction Barns, and this comes from Tim Barmet, and he is the sheep and goat barn manager there at that livestock facility, sale facility. And he made an interesting comment in the sheep site talking about the growing U.S. ethnic market back in 2017. And he noticed previously that 99-pound lambs were worth the same price as these 140-pound lambs. So it was no wonder why his sale facility was receiving so many of these lighter weight lambs. Why do we see this premium and price differential? Certainly due to these lighter weight lambs, there is a need for those in some of those ethnic markets. We also know that there's a high lean to fat ratio. A lot of those lighter weight lambs aren't depositing nearly as much fat. We know that fat is wasty, it's wasted energy, and they also are able to capitalize on that high growth curve on some of those smaller lambs as producers feeding these lambs out. He also wanted to note that unaltered lambs were bringing a premium, and we'll talk about that here as we give you some hints and tips on marketing your lambs here in the future. So are there any potential concerns with this? There certainly can be, but it may not affect us as much here in the eastern U.S. as it may in the western U.S. We're very fortunate here in the East that we have so many different outlets for our small ruminants and their products themselves. This just gives our producers more opportunity to be able to capitalize on some of these specific markets that we have available to us. We also need to think that living here in the East, who is one of our biggest consumers or consumer bases? And that's certainly going to be the folks that live out on the East Coast. We do have some of our ethnic populations that live there. It's closer for them to be able to get their products as compared to the Western sheep production systems. And also thinking about those different types of ethnic populations, we need to understand when some of their religious ceremonies are going to be taking place. The first one of which that we'll kind of outline is the one that most of us should be familiar with, and it just occurred here yesterday, would be Easter Sunday. And we can see here that for our typical Easter, it's always going to lie within the month of April. And that's pretty important for us to note because that ensures that we do have a pretty consistent window of time that we're able to get these used bred back in the fall, lamb them down at an appropriate date, get these lambs weaned, and then sold to the auction facilities. We also note that it's important that producers get these animals weaned and also sold to these livestock facilities at least 2.5 to 3 weeks prior to the holiday. This is because the buyers are at the auction barns looking for specific animals to buy and put into their specific marketing channels. And they need to ensure that they've got enough time to get this accomplished, and also to get these animals harvested and gotten into these retail markets or to these people's homes that are demanding these animals. On the other side of things, we do need to take a look at some of these other religious holidays. And the one that I'll focus on here is of the Islamic faith. And we're taking a look at Ramadan. And Ramadan is going to be the month of fasting. So the Islamic faith are a group of people that also enjoy our small ruminant products, but we need to understand when some of their religious ceremonies occur. This month of fasting, as we can see from year to year, will change, and it changes quite significantly. And we can see that it jumps back and forth as well. So we also need to be cognizant of that we're not marketing or intending on marketing lambs during this time period because it is a month of fasting. But thankfully for us, when Ramadan does end, we know that they do have this meal or this day of celebration, and they're going to have a large feast. And during this large feast, these folks like to get a lamb carcass itself. They'll prepare it as a family and share it with friends and family themselves. And this is really important for us to understand, as you can see again, that this time period of this day of feast will change from year on in and year out. So if we're intending on capturing this specific market itself, we need to understand that we've got to plan far beyond just this holiday. We need to take a step back. We need to think about, okay, it's going to take us 60 plus days to get these lambs weaned off. Are we going to put them on feed? Are we going to sell them as roaster lambs? But we also need to think about that it's going to take approximately 5 months from conceptus to these ewes lambing down and having these lambs available for your operation. So it's going to take some time and some planning. So it's always nice for you to have this type of calendar available to you, especially if your intended markets are going to be some of these specific ethnic markets that you're going into. Stepping aside from the carcasses and the lamb sales themselves, we thought it was pretty important for us to take a look at some of the other products that our animals are producing. The first of which is going to be the wool market and the wool demand. For those of you that are members of the Ohio Sheep Improvement Association, your dues allow you to be a part of the American Sheep Association as well through the American Sheep Industry. And the American Sheep Industry send out a weekly report via your email, and then you also get a magazine, Sheep Industry News, on a monthly basis. And what they do is they really give us a good idea of what the national market prices for our wool is on a weekly basis. Commonly selling our fleeces on a commercial basis as grease weight. So these are uncleaned, ungraded wool. And as you can see, those wool prices are around that 38 to 40 cents. So what else we need to think about in terms of marketing? What else does the market demand, and what are they looking for? Our folks that are involved in the industry are certainly looking on the live side of things. We're looking for genetics and breeding stock, whether you're a producer and using the National Sheep Improvement Program to collect data to further enhance the predictability of the genetic capability of your flock, or just collecting just simple data that you're able to utilize on your farm specifically. We're also interested in live weight gain. How long does it take for that animal to be weaned? At what weight is it being weaned? And also how long and how many days is it spending in the feedlot? From a carcass standpoint, our consumers are certainly concerned about flavor, also animal care, but our producers are also heavily concerned about animal care and animal husbandry and how we're rearing those animals themselves within our systems. And then from both sides of the coin, we're looking at quality. We want a quality of live animals. We want to make sure that they function and move smoothly out on the pasture or in the facility that we're housing them in. And we're also looking for these quality carcasses. And utmost important in our industry is consistency. We want to ensure that we have a consistent product for our consumers at the retail end, and therefore we need to have a consistent quality product in terms of our breeds and flocks that we are utilizing in order to produce these products themselves. So thinking about that, what type of sheep breeds do we need to meet the demand of our retail market. Now, this is by no means an exhaustive list of the different breed combinations and possibilities that you can possibly use, but we just wanted to throw up a couple ideas for those of you that may be interested in getting into the small ruminant industry, specifically focusing in on sheep. So we're going to talk about just two brief categories here. The first of which is going to be our maternal breeds, or going to be those breeds that are used to develop our ewe flock or our ewe base. What we're really focusing on here is milk production and mothering ability. The first two breeds that you can see that we have listed here are some of our white-faced breeds, the Dorset and the Cheviot. The Dorset, a white-faced breed, also a white-hooved breed, is known to be great mothers and great in terms of milk production. Our Cheviots are really nice. They do really well out in our pastoral systems. They have a lot of vigor to these lambs. These lambs were up and nursing in a matter of minutes after being born. These breeds are going to be considered medium fleece breeds themselves. Thinking about some of our coarse wool breeds, the one that's most common over in the United Kingdom is going to be our utilizing and making our mule type sheep, which is our F1 females that are making those F2 terminal cross lambs. So again, if you're looking for a sheep that's able to withstand a lot of harsh weather conditions and also very good in their mothering abilities, the Border Leicester could be your ticket. Thinking about some of our dairy breeds, our East Frisian is a really nice breed of sheep that can include in some of our flocks, high milking ability, and therefore should have some high weaning weights on those lambs. Our Finn sheep, or our Finnish Landris, originates from Finland, and they're known for an increase in prolificacy. So if we're looking to increase the number of lambs born in our flock, we could think about introducing some Finn into our flock itself. Thinking about some of the composite breeds that have already been made, two of which that were made here in the United States for the production of both lambs and wool, were both the Polypay and Targhee. The Polypay getting its name from multiple ways to pay. The Polypay was known to have multiple lambs at birth, wean a heavy litter and set of lambs at weaning time, and also be able to provide that producer with a quality fleece itself. And for those of us that are interested in utilizing a sheep that doesn't require any type of shearing itself, we can also think about some of our hair breeds. And the Katahdin breed is certainly a breed of sheep that's really nice to utilize. They also are beneficial in terms of managing parasites. They have a tolerance to parasitic infection. On the other side of the coin, we can think about our terminal breeds. Now, terminal breeds are going to be those breeds of sheep that are going to promote muscling and carcass cutability. We've also got different categories of these animals as well. These are going to be the males that we're using to breed this ewe base. Our white-face breeds, for example, could be our Dorset and our Texel. Now, you may note that I have Dorset on here twice. Dorsets can be considered both maternal and these terminal breeds. There are some line of Dorsets that are compact and are weather type sires, and they do provide a nice carcass in terms of providing those lambs on the rail. Our Texel, again, is a terminal breed of sheep that's able to provide a lot of muscle and a lot of power, especially in some of our crossbred terminal crosses that we're producing. Black-faced sheep, these are our common sheep that you may recognize in terms of terminal breeds. Some of our classic breeds here are going to be our Suffolk, Hampshire, and Shropshire, all of which are going to provide a lot of muscling to those F1 cross lambs as well. And then if you're not interested in shearing a ram on your operation, you can also think about using the Dorper as a terminal breed in your breeding operations as well. Thinking about the two different markets that we have here in the United States, we're going to split the U.S. right down the Mississippi River. And as you heard earlier in the video provided by Christine, Ohio is the largest sheep producing state east of the Mississippi. So thinking about those breeds of sheep that may be more suitable for our eastern U.S. market are going to be those breeds that are early maturing breeds. So perhaps those lambs will be originating for some breeds that have a smaller finishing weight and also a bit more compact, that are able to make some of those highly demanded roaster lambs. So those lambs have a lot of product at a small weight. So again, thinking about those roaster lambs as feeder lambs and how we're going to get those channeled through our different ethnic markets. Thinking about land availability as we compare east to west, we have just less ground physically available for us to be raising livestock on here in the eastern U.S. So therefore, we want to ensure that our animals that we're raising here in the east are efficient, they're small, and they're compact. And we also have a market for specialty wool here. So aside from the commercial wool industry, we do have some specialty breeds here that are produced mainly for their wool or even a byproduct for their wool. As we compare the east to the west has a lot of sheep breeds that are later maturing. So it's going to be Rambouillet and Columbia influenced. They're going to have a bigger frame to them. They'll also require those lambs to be on feed for a longer period of time in order to reach an appropriate finishing weight. These finishing lambs, again, are going to be large frames. They are going to weigh a bit more at harvest, more at that 140, 160 plus pounds at harvest weight. And then again, a lot of our commercial wool industry originates out in the west. So thinking about lamb marketing, what drives our marketing strategies? What drives our cost of and profits themselves? What's going to be driving our marketing strategies? It really comes down to who your are you going to be selling directly to the consumer? That may be that you're selling your products as carcasses and such, or maybe you're selling some roasters or feeder lambs. The beauty of the small ruminant industry is that there's so many different options that we can sell these animals in. What drives our costs and our profits is certainly the biggest one is going to be feed costs. It accounts for at least 70 to 75% of our operational costs that we have in our operation. So are you choosing to put your animals into a feedlot, which is going to cost you some overhead costs in terms of maintaining a facility, providing water, providing ventilation, and appropriate air movement during those times a year when it's needed the most? And again, the profits are going to be generated from those costs or be deducted from those costs that we have. And ultimately, the combination of all of the above will determine where and when and how we're going to be selling these animals. So in terms of marketing, I have a lot of people that ask, what are the best options on marketing my animals on my operation itself? And there's many different ways that we can be marketing our animals. And this is not, again, an exhaustive list by no means. I'm also not sponsoring any type of marketing strategy, but I did want to provide a couple of examples that Christina and I have used in the past that have been quite successful itself. If you take a look online, there's certainly a lot of avenues that you can pay for, and some of them are also free that you can utilize to market and post ads on the livestock that you have available. So I encourage you guys to cruise the web and see what you can do in terms of marketing your animals. For those of us that either are breeding purebred breeding stock or maybe buying some purebred rams for our terminal cross scenarios, all of our breed associations in the U.S. have a web directory to them and also have this membership list. And what's really nice about this is that you're able to put your contact information online for free. Some of our breed associations also have opportunity where you can put animals for sale on a for sale board. Utilizing social media is also great in terms of letting people know what's going on in your operation, give them an inside look. Take a look at what's going on in terms of lambing, and also some of the end products that you guys have available to yourselves. In my opinion, social media can speak many words, because take a look at some of these photos. I mean, a photo can speak 1,000 words itself. So taking a look at one, how are these animals being managed and raised, in what scenario and what environment that they're in. And then again, how your products have been successful down the line is also beneficial. But being in this industry for quite some time, I've also found that word of mouth is always a great way to get your information across and let people share some of your information as well. So I encourage you guys to be good shepherds of your animals and stewards of the land, and also create some of those personal relationships. Take time to answer questions on the phone, on the email, on social media, and make those connections with people. Because those few minutes spent writing out a text or taking 5 minutes on a phone call will certainly pay dividends in the end. We have a lot of people that ask us do you have any tips in terms of marketing? And we've tried to put together just a quick and simple list of marketing tips that Christine and I could think about. First of which we've talked about is going to be selling these animals prior to the holidays, and we talked about the importance of that. If we're taking a large group of animals or any type of group of animals to the sale barn or to a facility for sale, we want to make sure that we're allotting these animals or marking them specifically. Again, our consumer base, whether that be somebody at the sale barn buying a set of lambs going to slaughter, an individual buying sheep as replacement ewes, or even our consumers buying meat in the retail case, everybody wants a consistent product. So if we can consistently provide a nice group of, for example, 50-pound white face lambs, those animals will sell at a higher premium because there is a consistent supply of those animals within that group. We talked about this earlier, but a lot of our ethnic populations prefer that our animals be left unaltered or unblemished. So therefore, if we're raising lambs, we can choose to keep the tails on and choose not to dock these individuals. For our male animals, we can choose not to castrate them and leave them intact. And even in our goat industry, we can choose not to disbud these animals and allow them to maintain their horns. And again, these will be some unaltered or unblemished animals, and these animals will actually receive a premium if those animals are demanded during a specific religious holiday. We want to ensure that our animals are kept clean. That should be a no-brainer there. And then also you can offer deals and services off farm or on farm if you feel comfortable enough in doing so.
To build off some of those tips that Brady has shared with you, and in the same realm, are to make sure that you are putting your personal spin on your marketing as well. One of the ways that we do this through extension as a way to promote the products that our shepherds produce is to make sure that when we have a sheep or a goat program, that we serve the attendees lamb or goat. We really need to make sure that we're practicing what we're preaching, that we are eating like we are shepherds in our day-to-day lives. And as Brady has mentioned, utilizing social media as a way to share that can be extremely effective, especially while we are doing our social distancing right now. But don't forget that some of the great ways to share what you do are to take it out to where your friends are, to share it in your community. Take a lamb dish to the potluck. Serve lamb at a holiday party at your home. People may know that you raise sheep, but they still may have never tasted your product. So offering ways for them to do that can be extremely effective. Some of the ways we've done that locally, as you can see on the slide here, the first picture is a gentleman named Neil Rubel. We had an event at his farm. He and his son Eric sell a lot of freezer lamb. We gathered the people there in their shop. We served them the product grown on that farm. And to see the people enjoying his products was so impactful. To see the smile on his face as people enjoyed what they were producing was amazing. The section of leg here that you see cooked up, that was from a lamb grown at my place. I served it at New Year's dinner. If people were coming to my house, they were eating my lamb, and we didn't have any complaints that day. And lots of people asked, how did you make this? Where did you get this? And those are the types of conversations we need to be having with people. One of the things we've done at our local county fair was set up an informational booth. This booth was a combined effort between our county extension office, a local 4-H group, and the Ohio Sheep Improvement Association. And we accessed many of the promotional materials that are available through Lamb Checkoff. They are available at AmericanLamb.com. You can order free promotional materials from there. You can also order things like fabric bags and t-shirts and cutting boards and cups to either promote yourself as you use them or to give away to people as well. And then the last picture there, you see a lamb chop on a salad, and that was the final product of that lamb chop video that we shared earlier. So make sure you are utilizing those materials available to you. A few more marketing tips for you as producers, especially if you're marketing lamb locally, or to make sure that you're abiding by any of the rules and regulations that are in effect for us as the state of Ohio and also on the local county or city level as well. There are regulations in place by ODA and also local health departments to make sure that meats are handled safely when they're used as retail items, whether that's directly from your farm or at a farmer's market or a grocer. If you are processing lamb locally, one of the big things you need to do is have a plan in place to get those animals processed. We often run into issues where our product is ready for slaughter, but the processor can't get it in because they are so busy. Oftentimes, you need to schedule a slaughter date before your animal is even born, in the case that we have with sheep. Right now, there's about a 6 month to a year wait at many small processors. So get to know them and get those dates on the schedule and line your products up appropriately so that you're not overfeeding an animal as you try to make it to that slaughter date. There definitely is a high demand for locally processed produced meats, and people like to buy it from a farmer that they know. But especially if you are marketing that you have freezer meat for sale, it is crucial that you make sure you're following those regulations because you could be subject to fines if it's discovered that one, your meat's not labeled appropriately or it's not stored appropriately. When it comes to those labels, there's multiple labels that you'll see. If your meat was processed in a facility that's considered custom processing, it was probably not inspected by a state or federal agency, and it will be labeled not for sale. If you have it at a state inspected facility, you'll have a label with the state of Ohio, and that will enable you to sell the meat anywhere within the state of Ohio. In order to sell across the state line, though, your meat should be processed at a federally inspected facility. So for people like Brady and I, we live really close to a state line, and it's possible that you could be selling to somebody across the state line. As long as the meat was sold from your farm and they took it back with them, that's not your responsibility. But if you, say, went to a farmer's market just across the border in Wheeling and sold your product there, but you were state inspected in the state of Ohio, you would be non-compliant. So these are things that you do need to be aware of as you continue to market your products locally.
So as we move into some of our market expectations, we've already given you some hints and tips on how to get your animals marketed. Let's think of things that we would have expected our markets to have looked like in lieu of the pandemic that we are currently under. All of this information here on this slide was provided by OSU Extension Ag and Natural Resources educator by Tim Barnes up in Marion County. So we thank him for providing some of this additional information coming up in the slides here. The food service and dine-in industry will certainly account for over 50% of American lamb consumption. And due to the shutdown of these facilities, there's certainly a significant damage being done to these food service markets. Also thinking about the stay in place and stay at home orders being put in place by our governor here in the state of Ohio and reducing the amount of people at gatherings. This certainly has impacted the sale of our products as well in terms of our Easter sales and some of our spring markets, especially with those being expected to be our highest sale points throughout the year. So as a result, we have certainly seen a loss of demand and therefore lower prices because the demand is no longer there. So what Christine and I have tried to do is put together some of our own marketing reports, and this is, I'm sure, how most of you have been taking a look at some of these reports, especially under the circumstances that we've been put under. So again, these the format of these figures may seem to be quite similar as we've seen them before in our presentation. Again, these are going to be information and data from Mount Hope, both the Wednesday sales, the first of which here to the left-hand side is going to be 2020, and that's going to be about our 2.5-week mark out before the Easter holiday. And as you can see, there are about 1,600 lambs being sold during this time period. Here we can see that our prime 40-60 pound lambs were only bringing about $2.15. If we recall from a year ago, previously in the presentation, that number was in upwards of $3.50 per pound for those lambs of that weight range. So we can see the significant drop of what these producers have been experiencing from this year compared to last. However, we did want to note that the Wednesday sale following April 1st here at April 8th, we can see again that these lambs that are in the 40 to 60 pound range topped out about that $3.05 a pound. So quite similar prices that we may be used to, getting close to that value. Certainly not nearly as close as what we would like it to be, but we can see that there is an increase in price and perhaps an increase in demand of our products themselves. This is another figure provided by Tim Barnes there in Marion County. And what he did is he took information from United Producers, and this is going to be the sale barn there in Mount Vernon, Ohio. And what he was interested in is taking a look at these roaster lamb pricings. Now, again, these roaster lambs are weighing an average weight of about 60 pounds. And as you can see here, taking a look at that through the timetable that he's got provided, you can see that it's quite consistent throughout the year. We can see that actually these roaster lambs were in a high demand at the very beginning of the year, here the 4th of January of 2020, of over $3 a pound. Again, that illustrates that importance of that fall market and maybe some of those fall lambs being produced. And then unfortunately, as we get beyond March here, approaching April, we can see that our figure is beginning to drop down towards that $2 and even perhaps less per pound of those roaster lambs themselves. On the other side of the coin, we can take a look at the average price of these finished lambs, or these 131-pound lambs. Tim also provided us data from 2016, 17, and 18. But as you can see, the figure here shows a quite consistent price, hovering around that $150 to $200 per hundredweight on those live weight lambs. And again, you can see that there's this influx or peak here during that Easter time period. Aside from our carcasses of our lambs and actual live weight or live sale of our lambs at our sale facilities, take a look at some of the raw wool data. Again, this is reflective of the commercial wool industries. You can see at the end of March and even at the 1st of April, our wool industry continues to plummet from 38% down, and then also there at the 1st of April down 43%, according to those weekly wool reports that we're receiving through American Sheep Industry. Thinking about the processor side of things, we do know that the pelts had value to them at one point or another for our leather products. And you can see here that we've got an average price during 2016 all the way up to 18. That's going to be represented by this orange line. Our dotted line is going to represent last year, and then our blue incomplete line is going to be the figures of data from this year that are ongoing. Again, coming from the USDA. You can see that getting quality pelts in those harvest facilities were actually quite beneficial to some of those processors for the first portion of each year during 2016 and 2018. They got close to a $3 premium for a nice quality pelt. However, since last year, you can see this is our $0 mark on our pelt status. You can see that we've continued to plummet throughout. Currently in our industry, you can see that as of April here, it's actually costing our processors $2 per pelt to get those items rendered. So it's certainly a loss of product and a loss of opportunity for our processors to continue onward. So trying to put some of that loom and gloom behind us, we need to think about what can be done now in the current time. We certainly need to keep our heads up. Our markets have been good. We've shown the data of where we believe that they will continue to be good. And we need to know that this will be short-lived and it will eventually pass. Our markets will come back. We have lost this Easter holiday, but we shouldn't give up hope in the following years. We've had several contact us asking, when should we be marketing our animals? Should we be holding on to them? One of the best answers that we can give is market your animals as intended. And the reason for this is that perhaps your operation may not be suited for you to feed out some of these lambs. You may not have the resources available, whether that be the barn space, the amount of bedding, or the feed that's required to feed those lambs to an appropriate marketable weight, according to what you have envisioned on doing. If you do intend on marketing your lambs as usual, we recommend that they be marketed earlier than later. because a lot of people are probably in the same boat as you, and you do not want to flood the market all at once. On the flip side, if you're able to retain those feeder lambs, perhaps you could retain them and feed them out. Or if you've got several ewe lambs, you could maintain some more replacement ewe lambs, get rid of some of the old call ewes that are within your flock and replenish your herd and flock. Perhaps you need to start thinking about some alternative markets that you could be involved in, whether those be around those religious holidays and using that calendar that we provided, or anything else that you can think of, whether that be farmers markets and such. And then also it's important that you keep current and up to date. Again, you can do that by joining us with the Ohio Sheep Improvement Association and also through the American sheep industry. And with that, Christine and I do thank you guys for attending today. We hope you enjoyed the presentation. For those of you that are interested in contacting us, we've got our contact information listed here, and we hope that you guys continue to follow us throughout the day as we continue onward with the sheep bracket, and we'll continue to talk about sheep stuff.
More sheep stuff always coming your way. If you have not already subscribed to the OSU Sheep Team, you can also do that at sheep.osu.edu. Once a week, Brady sends out a collection of articles that are very timely that you can get delivered straight to your inbox every Wednesday. So check those out, and thanks again for watching this webinar.